You are back on the night side with NBC, and we continue now with a closer look at what American cities are doing to fight the war on drugs.
That war is escalating, and most major cities and many small towns are not only battling drugs, they're also battling those involved in selling them to drug gangs. But as NBC's Rick Davis reports, officials are pulling out all the stops to win this war.
Federal and state investigators allege Cynthia Smith traveled far to sell drugs in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, all the way from Los Angeles. Drug agents searched 5 houses and arrested 4 others for selling crack cocaine. A raid in Little Rock, Arkansas last week led to 56 arrests there and 17 others in Los Angeles and Baltimore. Suspects accused of selling cocaine in a ring operated by the Crips gang of Los Angeles. Street gangs first moved into the nationwide drug distribution business back in the mid-1980s, and the profits were staggering.
Money, money, money!
And over the years, it's been a growth industry.
These people are actually dividing up parts of the country or areas of the country to suit their drug networks.
The FBI says gangs in New York, Miami, and Los Angeles are doing market studies to sell the most drugs for the most money.
And we're seeing some of these gangs show up in places like Little Rock. They're showing up in Wichita, Kansas. They're showing up in Gary, Indiana. It's almost like a franchise. You have a particular small city, and that's your franchise, and we have a particular gang that takes over that city or that geographic area. We're worried about them getting the stature and the organization like we had with the organized crime families of the 50s.
But in the 50s, the power of the mobsters was diminished by federal investigations. And gangland hits. The best-known mobster of today, John Gotti, is in prison. Now law enforcement officials have placed increasing emphasis on shutting down the drug gangs who threaten to redefine the term organized crime. Rick Davis, NBC News.
Well, many of the victims in the war on drugs, of course, are innocent, babies, bystanders, people in the wrong place at the wrong time. The reality of the problem is seen every day by emergency room doctors and nurses. And now one doctor who made the transition from the streets of Chicago to the operating room at the Los Angeles hospital is giving young criminals a reality check. Beverly White has more from Los Angeles.
Somebody else made money off of you. You are the slaves and the fools, and now you got to pay the dues.
Dr. Juan Asensio doesn't mince words when he speaks to the convicts at the California Youth Authority. His listeners are so young that we can't show their faces, but Asensio shows them the shattered bodies of crime victims whose lives he tries to save.
Young man, 15 years old. He was in a gang. He pissed off somebody, so he got shot 13 times with 3 different caliber weapons.
Asensio believes boys who shoot, stab, and gangbang are more than ready for the grim pictures and rough language of his reality check program.
I am angry. I am angry. And I've been in the streets, and I've done it all.
A few dozen juveniles out of the 800-plus population earned the privilege to hear Asensio speak.
You're lucky you're alive. And you better think about that.
So we asked the older inmates if Dr. Asensio made his point.
Seeing the clippings, you know, the pictures that he had on the wall with the babies that had been shot from bullets that had no names and things like that, you know, I mean, that just touched me, and I'm just like, you know, I have 2 kids of my own.
I believe everyone in the room was shocked from the presentation because we don't get to see things like that and on the streets or when we were free.
Rodney Tyson is the senior physician's assistant alongside Dr. Asensio. But when he was 13, Tyson was locked down in a juvenile hall.
They just need a little direction, a little guidance. You know, they have all the skills necessary to become successful. You know, if I could do it, they could do it.
The medical team hopes its message resonates beyond the prison walls because the boys will go free someday.
Toughness is when you look at yourself and you say, you know, I'm going to do something with my life. I'm going to try and prevent, you know, my mother from having to stand over that casket. That's toughness.
Beverly White, NBC News.
Hopefully he reaches at least one young teen. Well, the closing of a campus of the Arizona Boys Ranch leads our Nightside News calendar for this Monday, June 1st.